The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbransen.
Oh, boy. What a boring Saturday night, everybody. Nothing happened much in the world of Raiders football. I have no idea what we're going to talk about today. Of course, if you just woke up and you haven't looked at your Twitter feed or anything, you might actually believe me, but in reality, that is not the case. Antonio Brown is going to be an Oakland/Las Vegas Raider. Happy Sunday, Raider Nation. Welcome back to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Las Vegas' only all Raiders all the time sports talk show coming to you live from the Dollar Loan Center, Don'tBeBroke.com studios. I am your host, Scott Gulbransen, founder and publisher of SilverandBlackToday.com. Today, joined by my team. That's right, my team. Our revamped roster co-hosts today include NFL draft analyst for Silver and Black Today, Kelly Kreiner. How you doing, Kelly?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. It's obviously busy, right? And then
why did something happen?
I don't know, something. Yeah, you were not sleeping, but you were obviously not paying attention.
Did I miss something?
Well, yeah, just a little bit, but we'll get into that. And then back on the show today after his trip to Southeast Asia is Chaz Osborne.
Yeah.
Chaz, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm going to get you back for this. You invited me back in daylight savings time.
You were living the life, right, over in Southeast Asia. What were you doing over there again?
Sitting on the beach, drinking Singapore Sling, and then you said, come back and do the show.
Singapore Sling, what is that?
I'm not sure.
They still make those?
I wasn't even in Singapore. That was the weird part.
You were drinking Vietnamese something. What was that?
Vietnamese coffee.
Vietnamese coffee.
Big on
Yeah,
their coffee.
that is big. Yes, they are. So thanks to you guys for being here. We're going to have fun today. A lot to talk about. And reminder, we are streaming today's show worldwide on the radio.com app. If you don't already have the app, you're missing out. Radio.com is the place for the best sports talk, music, and everything else. Download it and listen to us live anywhere in the world. Also, we're live on video today as usual. You can catch us right in the studio on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, via Periscope. I already see a lot of active conversations happening there. Lots of viewers going out already, as I would anticipate for this Sunday morning after the big trade. We're also on Twitch if you're a gamer. Also a ton of listener-viewer chat, so jump in. Tell us what you think. Also call 702-889-5978. We'll get you on in this first segment if you call in. We want to hear what you have to think about the trade. In addition, be sure to read the website that started it all, silverandblacktoday.com, the only Raiders website based in the team's future home of Las Vegas, silverandblacktoday.com, including 2 stories on the trade, one by myself with the news, and then Hayden Dodonley, who will be on the show later from Australia. He's waking up at 3 a.m. Australia time to be on with us.
Solid.
That just shows you the dedication. There is no weeks off. There is no time off here with the show. At least that's the way we say it. Okay, let's set topics on the table real quick and tell you what's ahead on the show. It's the AM, so it's AB time. It's the PM, it's AB time. The story of the week comes to fruition, of course, with Antonio Brown, and we'll get into the details with that. But the show is stocked full of guests, national guests to give you comment. We will have Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News will be here. He'll give us a national perspective on the AB stuff. Also, we'll talk a little bit about NFL Combine with him. Yes, I know you want to talk all about Antonio Brown, but there is also other things happening in the NFL and with the Raiders. And in addition to that, the man who covered Antonio Brown his entire career in Pittsburgh, and that is Ray Fiittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, will be here. He'll give us the backstory of how we got even to a point where it was so bad that Antonio Brown wanted out of Pittsburgh. He'll give us insight onto that and what the Raiders are getting in the player. We know on the field what that means, but what else from a locker room perspective does it mean as well? We'll also hear from Moe Moton. Moe from Bleacher Report, a guest on the show a lot. He'll be here to tell us a little bit and why and what it means for Derek Carr. Of course, he's got a new receiver, guys, right? But what else does it mean for Derek Carr to have Antonio Brown there? And Mo's got an interesting perspective on that, so we'll hear from him on that as well. In addition, we'll be joined by Hayden Dodonley, as I said. He'll give us his point of view on why this trade was a slam dunk for the Raiders. And then we'll talk to former Raiders wide receiver, someone who knows a lot about asking for a trade and for knowing kind of and being in the situation that Antonio Brown was in, and that is Jerry Porter. Jerry Porter will be with us as well on the show. And then we'll roundtable some of this later on, and we'll close the show with Kelly's Corner, of course. So that's what you have, Raider Nation. We know the subject today. It's pretty simple. You're up to date. Set topics on the table. You get on the board. Call us. 702-889-5978 is the number, if you dare, and I think you will. Call in. Tell us what you think. I mean, so guys, okay, let's get initial reactions from the team here at Silver and Black today. Starting with you, Kelly. Let's talk about the trade. What's your initial reaction?
I'm not surprised that it went that way. You know, said on the podcast the other day that I expected him by Saturday or Sunday to be a Raider. I'm surprised it was for a 3 and a 5. It just shows how bad that situation got, that you can take it, that you got somebody of this talent that cheap. I mean, everybody's talking about, well, you have to give him this. You know, you got to give him the contract. You got to give him the money. Raiders have cap space. You know, you've got the chance to take the best wide receiver in the NFL for a 3rd and a 5th. You've got basically 4 first-round picks this year, because that 35th pick, there's always a guy that's a first-round talent that falls in that 2nd round.
Yep.
So you're basically adding 5. You have a chance to add 5 premium-level talent players to this roster.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. But there's so many facets, and we have a whole show to talk about it. But Chaz, when you look at this trade from the perspective of not only what the Raiders gave up, which to me is not a ton. I mean, picks are picks. You can use those and package them together for something bigger. But not a ton. What they're getting back in return, if he's happy, I think is a steal. What's your view on the trade overall?
I agree with you 100%. I mean, I guess the question is, would you trade Amari Cooper for Antonio Brown?
Yeah.
Every day of the week, right?
Yep.
And we didn't even have to give up what we got for him. We got it for less. And were we going to pay Amari Cooper that money? Probably pretty close to it. So it's a definite upgrade. I think the Raiders should be happy. Everybody, Raider Nation, should be thrilled about it.
Well, and it certainly addresses a need that the Raiders had, which, of course, was the fact that they needed a wide receiver. To get the best wide receiver in the game. And we look at the numbers, right? So let's go over that. I know people start reading that in the stories today, but if you look at Antonio Brown through the course of his career, he has not slowed down. In fact, last year, which some considered a down year for him, he still had 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns. And over the course of his career, averages right around 1,200 or about 1,100 yards a year. And that includes just 2 years where he was below 1,000 yards. And with the exception of the first 4 years of his career, double digits in touchdowns, and with the exception of 17 as well, which he had some injuries there and some issues. So to me, it's hard to find a bad situation or a bad view of this trade other than, is there an issue with locker room stuff? And Chaz, with your experience working for the Los Angeles Lakers for 12 years as a scout, we'll talk to you about that a little bit later, and we'll also ask Jerry Porter about it, because Jerry Porter, who'll be later on the show, was in that situation. He did not get along with Art Shell.
How could you not like Art Bell, man?
On radio.
Le'Veon Shell.
I know. Area 51. So to me, though, he did not get along with Art Shell. He demanded a trade, was not happy in his last year. That earned him a reputation for a little bit. And so Antonio Brown, not different. So we're going to ask him about being in the position, because hearing it from a person who was kind of in a similar situation, I think will help us. But we'll certainly see what happens there. So I don't know, guys. I think overall, especially with you look at the price they paid to Chaz's point around the Raiders and giving up a 3rd and a 5th. And then there were some reports out today. I won't give them out yet because we haven't confirmed them. But that they might include a player or so, more of a role player that is currently on the Raiders. I don't know if that's true or not. We'll see what happens. But even so, to your point, you got the first-round pick. You didn't have to give that up for Amari Cooper. So you're giving up, it's in essence the same thing you did for Martavis Bryant last year, right? As you said, Kelly? I mean, not a lot different.
And when everybody brings up the money, Sammy Watkins got $60 million and $30 million guaranteed. You're not paying that big of a premium to go from Sammy Watkins to Antonio Brown.
Yep.
No, you're not. You're not. And the thing is, Kelly, you're giving. He's getting 30 of that guaranteed.
Yeah.
So for him, it's huge, right? And so to me, I think there's people focusing on that part of it. But for a player, if you're thinking, if you've got $30 million guaranteed, that's $10 million guaranteed a year for 3 years, which you have him on contract for. To me, that's not bad at all, and he's still performing. It's not like he's got declining skills, as we've seen.
Yeah, Williams from San Diego is going to be getting $30 million guaranteed.
Now this set the market, did it not?
You don't think? Not necessarily, just because it is Antonio Brown. Yeah. It might be like a ceiling for what these guys get, but it's going to be in that 16 to 20 range.
Yeah, there's different levels: elite level, next level, next level.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. To me, he's the best wide receiver in the game. So, want to shout out to Regina Lopez listening to us in Tijuana. Chaz, you know I've been there a bunch of times, especially back in the 80s.
We have. I don't remember, but you told me we had a good time.
I don't remember.
I've been once. That was good enough.
Yeah, you know what though? I love we have viewers and listeners all over the world. That's thanks to the radio.com app, and of course. We have it on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. So you can always watch us somewhere, and that makes it very accessible for folks. So anyway, listen, we're going to step aside, and on the other side of this break, we're going to be joined by Vinnie Iyer of the Sporting News. We're going to get his reaction to the trade that shook the world, and, of course, that is the trade for Antonio Brown of the Raiders. You're listening to Silver and Black today here only, that's right, on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
We're here with Chuck, founder of Dollar Loan Center. Is it true that mostly low-income people use Dollar Loan Center?
No, that couldn't be further from the truth.
1140.
This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gulbranson.
Welcome back to CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas. This is Silver and Black Today. Just a little thing happened last night, and that was the Raiders traded for Antonio Brown with the Steelers. And we like to get a national perspective on this. And we originally had Vinnie coming on to talk, Vinnie Iyer of the Sporting News, who we now are joined live on the Attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line. But, of course, with the news that broke last night, we're going to talk to him first about that. And hopefully, Vinny, we get a little bit of NFL Combine on today. Thanks for joining us here on Silver and Black Today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's just big news Saturday night that no one expected, but maybe we expected it could happen. And maybe the timing threw people off, especially with the wrong piece of information that we got earlier in the week. But it's I don't think it's a surprise that he ended up there, given all the factors that were in play.
Yeah, and Vinny, I think that one of the things, too, that we know, when you have a player of that caliber, no matter what is happening kind of with what people think of him, either being a diva or having drama, whatever it is, he's still an amazing talent. So the story, for journalists, that story is going to occupy a lot of time, especially as we had that time between the Combine and the start of free agency next week. But with that all going down, were you surprised that the Steelers weren't able to get more for Antonio Brown?
It's not surprising because he's been dangled out there for a long time, and then the market kind of sets itself. Maybe they overestimate who's going to go after and is willing to give up the asset necessary or they would like in return. And it's hard when you have a player that the team is going to give up, because everyone's going to not necessarily collaborate on this, but going to get that sense across the league that Pittsburgh is going to have to move this guy, and they need to do it for other reasons. It's not just to say, okay, we want to save some money and we want to get some commodity for a player. They know that this is a player they can't have in their organization for other reasons more than anything else. So I think when people realize that and weighed that, they wanted to see what would happen if they kind of made the Steelers sweat a little bit, and that's what you got in this trade.
He had the roster bonus coming due. Do you think that if they hold on, they just go ahead and pay, I believe it's $2.5 million, and just keep going even closer to the draft, they might have been able to get a better package? Or was this kind of at the point to where this is kind of what they were going to get no matter how long they waited?
Yeah, I think it was there that value is probably set for the situation. It's just very unique. Again, everyone knew that they couldn't carry him because it's not just about how long they want him to be around there, but the more and more he was around, the other things were happening, distractions, things were hanging over them, and even in this portion of the off season, things just didn't have the right feel. So I think they had to clear that. I think they were able to cut ties, obviously, with Le'Veon Bell a lot easier because of the free agency status, but I think you had to do this in a package deal now before March 11th, the tampering period, and March 13th with things going on with free agency getting really fast and furious, and you have to make some quick decisions there, and you have to know what you have financially to go forward.
Again, we're talking to Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News, NFL writer, also writes on fantasy too, which I read him for as well. Vinnie, when we look, and when you were down at the Combine, and I mean, there's no questioning Antonio Brown's talent on the field and what he's able to do there. He's a top player in the league, and now he's getting money for that. But when you talk to people behind the scenes, people not only in Pittsburgh but everyone else in the league, about the issues that he had this past year, the locker room issues, the breakdown of the relationship between him, the team, the coach, the quarterback, and Ben Roethlisberger, what was kind of the takeaway from that? Was it just a fractured relationship and that was it, or could there be more there?
Well, I think Antonio Brown has always been a little bit different, and it just blew up a little bit more. I mean, you look at it, and he's been very busy with his activities elsewhere, and he is a little bit throwback to some of those receivers we've had in the past, where the attention is important to him, and he's going to be involved in a lot of things, and it may not feel the right way with a lot of players and teammates, and in the NFL. I think a good thing that I've been thinking about here with Antonio Brown is that he would fit right in as an NBA player. He's a guy that is out there, fashion himself and that. I think the NFL is not necessarily this place for guys like Antonio Brown, and maybe they need to be a little bit more where embrace the stars a little bit more. You see that a little bit. They're kind of reserved in the way they promote their stars. Everyone kind of falls in line. They do the corporate thing. They don't tell you much. They don't get bold on social media as much as NBA players. They don't get bold with fashion and crazy things the way that NBA players can. But Antonio Brown had some of that power. And maybe the Steelers, the old school organization, they want everyone kind of be part of the team and the brand and the culture. And Antonio Brown, as much as he produced, and I think this is why he lasted there that long, because he was producing at an extremely high level, one of the greatest receivers of all time. But at some point, when you're not winning the championships, and then, okay, Le'Veon Bell's leaving anyway here, that's when the breakup happened.
Again, talking to Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News about Antonio Brown and his move to the Raiders. Now, when you look at this, and I agree with you, I think in Pittsburgh with that organization, that family-run organization, how it's been, what it stands for, and through the Rooney family, clearly you can see where that fit got stale. With the Raiders, on the other hand, now you have the Raiders getting ready to move here to Las Vegas. You have John Gruden, you have Mike Mayock, a rookie, a general manager who made a big splash, obviously, with his first deal. Do you see that fit? And even though Gruden is a guy who believes in kind of discipline and team first, do you see that fit being a much better one for him, at least in these last 3 years of his contract or of this new contract?
Definitely. I mean, you look at it, you can go back to the 70s. You know what organization Steelers were. You know what organization the Raiders were. And that Maverick sense is still there. It never goes away. That identity in its own right. I mean, even bringing back John Gruden and paying him that much is different from a lot of the way other teams have operated and thought. And even bringing a guy that was known for breaking down the draft and made a big career in his own way that way, is now running things there and evaluating your draft in-house. So they do things a little different. We know that in Oakland. This is a team that is looking for that splash, and I think they've always looked for that splash. It doesn't matter if they're a relocation, a transition situation, and you're trying to get on the marquee again. They're always looking for that, and I think they've always welcomed the guys that have been a little different there. I mean, they took a chance in the late career Jerry Rice, and we know how well he produced there for them on the other side of the bay. So I guess it's something about the Raiders and getting these big-time receivers later in their careers when things have not gone as well somewhere else.
Yeah, that's I agree with that. It's definitely been in their DNA, right? We talked about the Steelers' DNA versus the Raiders' DNA. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out. And clearly, we're talking a lot about it here today, Vinny. Now, in the last couple minutes we have with you, I want to get back to the original kind of point of topic that we originally booked you on the show for, which was a little bit of post-combine thoughts and your point of view on what happened. What did you see at the combine this year? I thought it was a little less eventful than usual just because of the class, but then again, I wasn't there. You were. What was your big takeaway from this combine, and what couple guys really stood out to you as being the story of the draft? Obviously Kyler Murray, but in addition to him.
Yeah, I don't think things changed too much. Maybe the way of the pecking order of some of these guys, but the bottom line is, do you need anybody in your front seven at basically a pass rusher or someone who can disrupt things inside and also get to the quarterback there? You're in good shape. I think the matter is how you fit in these guys, because the schemes are just all over the place now in terms of 3-4 versus 4-3, and then the hybrid versions of these schemes. So what can you get most out of these players? And you look at Nick Bosa, I think he's the easiest one of there. Should he go to the Cardinals or 49ers early in the draft, that just put him at defensive end in either spot, and you're going to be fine. He's going to dominate there. But then it gets a little trickier as you get down a little bit with Cleveland Farrell of Clemson or Ed Oliver there in the top 10, where you look at, okay, this guy can play end, tackle. What do we like? Is he going to fit our scheme? We're all different type of teams. I mean, you look at Detroit and Green Bay, two division rivals. They're picking early, completely different philosophies, the way they want to go after players, but in some ways, the same type of player is appealing to both teams. So that's the challenge here with these general managers more. These coaches want to do things so multiple right now. So it's just determining the right guy, that elite talent on the defensive line or outside linebacker spot.
All right, Vinny, so I appreciate you spending the time today. Thanks for your insight on everything. Now, one last question before I let you go. Is Kyler Murray, I know your last mock draft, you had him going first to the Cardinals. You still believe that?
I still believe that, but there's a couple things that make me change my feeling a little bit. But let's see where Le'Veon Bell ends up, because if Le'Veon Bell, and I know people freaked out that Derek Carr started following Le'Veon Bell on Twitter as Antonio Brown was being traded to the Raiders. Let's see what happens there. It'd be crazy if Derek Carr thought he was going to play with these guys and they make a move, and all of a sudden maybe there's some three-way trade, and all of a sudden the Raiders are sitting there and they have the Kyler Murray control in this draft. So I think right now it's the Cardinals heavy favorite. The Raiders would be the next one to me, and then everyone else, the field. So
wow.
I'm going to watch this one carefully with the Raiders, because it could be signaling that we want to get on the marquee, do things a little bit different. We'll see quickly if they believe in Derek Carr fully, if they get different type of skill players in there.
That's right. Well, Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News, we appreciate you being here. We'll have you on again real soon. Thanks, Vinny.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Vinny.
All right. Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News. We're going to step aside. When we come back on the other side of this break, we're going to be talking to Ray Fiittipaldo from Pittsburgh about Antonio Brown. You're listening to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio.
You're pregnant, and no matter what you do, no matter what you try, you can't stop using alcohol, drugs, or tobacco.
CBS Sports Radio. Help us talk the Silver and Black. Call us at 702-889-5978. Here's Scott Gulbranson on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM.
Welcome back to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio in Las Vegas, the future home of your soon-to-be Las Vegas Raiders. We are going back out on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line to bring in a guy who knows all about Antonio Brown and the situation with the Steelers, and now with Brown becoming reportedly a Raider, that as well. And joining us is Ray Fiittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Ray, how you doing this morning, man? A long night?
Yeah, you could say that. Hey, pretty good timing when we scheduled this last week too, I guess, huh?
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I was telling the guys in the studio here just before we went on that, yeah, exactly, because we, this time of the year for those of us in radio, you're covering the team. There's all kinds of things going on the print side. For radio guys, it gets a little difficult because sometimes from a content perspective, we're trying to figure it out. But we had booked you thinking, well, the Antonio Brown thing's dragging out. We'll see what happens. And very rarely when you have a weekend show like this and Sunday, except during the season, do we get lucky in news breaks. So, of course, it happened, which was really nice. So let's dive into this. First of all, where I want to start is how did we get here? We heard a lot about the breakdown of the relationship, i.e. the beginning of the end and the divorce that has now become Antonio Brown with the Steelers. How did we get here, and how did that all go down as you saw it, with Brown being unhappy and then eventually demanding a trade?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different angles to this, guys. I'll try to make it succinct. The Steelers ripped up Antonio Brown's contract after the playoffs in 2016 when they went to the AFC Championship game. And if you'll remember, that was only a few weeks after Antonio Brown did the whole Facebook Live thing after the Kansas City playoff win.
Yep.
And they made him the highest paid receiver in the NFL at that point. And then the way the Steelers structure their contracts, they prorate their signing bonuses. So Antonio Brown had guaranteed money that was split up throughout the length of that contract. And then they this past season, they converted a lot of that into a signing bonus. So he had all this money on the back end of the contract that's now dead cap money for them. So that's one angle to this. They sort of played into his hands by restructuring and redoing his contract so many times. And then the other part of this is just personal relationships within that team. With Ben Roethlisberger, it got bad last spring, and then again during the season. With Mike Tomlin, it got bad late in the season. And based on his behavior on social media within the last, just 2 months after all that happened, it was just an untenable situation for the Steelers. They knew they had to get rid of him, and the fact that they only had third and fifth round picks as compensation from the Raiders proves that point. They just didn't want to deal with that distraction anymore. That is not fair return for Antonio Brown. The Raiders, if AB behaves out there, the Raiders got a great deal.
Yeah, it's interesting. And again, we're talking to Ray Fiittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette about the big trade with the Raiders and the Steelers. And it's funny because Andrew Filipponi, who's based there in Pittsburgh and is on our network, CBS Sports Radio, had the opposite take, thought that the Steelers got a good deal. So go figure, but everybody's got their opinions right. And Chaz, you wanted to ask Ray a question, but it's interesting, Chaz, and I know that with what's going on here and what happened with Antonio Brown, I mean, the talent's undeniable. So,
no, Antonio Brown's great. I applaud the Steelers for standing their ground and not letting the acrobats run the circus, or whatever, however you want to say it. And you saw it with Le'Veon Bell. And now with Antonio Brown, where do they go from here? I think they're fine. Steelers have been, the team of all time. And Juju Smith, I think, can slide right into that spot. Where do you see the direction? They're not going to go into rebuild. They still got to juice a few good years out of Roethlisberger.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different ways you could look at it. The Steelers have always been able to draft receivers. You can go back to Hines Ward. I think it was 1998. He was a third-round pick. They got Mike Wallace, Emmanuel Sanders in the third round.
Yep.
They got Juju Smith-Schuster in the second round. So they've proven over the years that they can draft and develop receivers. So I think they'll be okay in the long run. But, guys, I mean, to your point, how do you replace Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown in that offense? I mean, they were such focal points of that offense for so many years. It's possible that the Steelers can still make this work. The Patriots make it work with much less than what the Steelers have. So it's not impossible, but it's going to be very interesting to see how this team sort of evolves over this offseason without those two superstars.
Is James Washington, do they think he can come in and be like a number 2, or is wide receiver something they're going to have to look at in free agency in the draft?
No, I think they'll take a look in free agency and they'll see what's out there. They're never an organization that will overpay for guys. So, if someone wants to be paid $10 million or more a year, Steelers likely aren't going to be involved in that just because they only have about $20 to $25 million in cap space to work with. So more than likely they're going to draft a guy, probably the second or third round. And James Washington, you mentioned him. He showed flashes in training camp of being really, really good. Now, when the regular season started, it didn't happen for him. He really struggled for most of the season. I think what the Steelers are banking on is he had a pretty strong finish to the season. He really came on late in the year. So if they can get that James Washington that they got for the final 4 games, then they draft a guy that can develop and maybe turn into their number 3 receiver, I think they'll be okay. But, that's a lot of ifs for an offense that didn't have many ifs.
Yes.
For the past 6 or 7 seasons.
Again, we're talking to Ray Fiittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette about Antonio Brown. Now, Ray, when you talk so many things, when that relationship broke down, one of the things that I think we see from Raider fans and folks that are following it a little bit are, the Raiders have said, and they said, and you heard this at the Combine, that they wanted to get younger and build this team. They're obviously getting to Las Vegas, their new stadium, their new revenue sources, all that stuff next season in 2020. So they're trying to build a younger team after fielding the oldest defense in the NFL last year and the oldest roster. You add Brown, you're not losing anything. Clearly an amazing talent and going to be great for you there. But everybody focuses on the locker room stuff. Outside of what happened last year, you've been around. I mean, you cover them on a daily basis for years. How is he to deal with? Is he a guy that you think is, now that he's happy and he's got this big deal, you think that's going to correct itself?
No, he's a strange guy, and he's just he's a different person. Just to give you guys a little bit of background, he doesn't talk until Fridays. So if you approach him on a Wednesday or a Thursday, no dice. He's one of these guys, and I think each team is allowed to have 2 or 3 guys who only talk 1 day a week, and he was the Friday guy for the Steelers. So he's incredibly difficult to deal with on a personal basis. And above and beyond that, when he did talk, it was just a lot of strange stuff. I'm sure you guys have seen some of the interviews and some of the unintelligible stuff that he says. He's just a different cat, and that doesn't mean it's going to affect his production on the field. We all have questions about how that's going to play out with a new quarterback, and we're talking in Pittsburgh about, there's no one left besides Juju Smith-Schuster. Well, who's out in Oakland to complement Antonio Brown? I think, that's going to be an issue for the Raiders as much as it is for the Steelers. But, there's a lot of stuff that the Raiders are going to have to deal with Antonio Brown, but the production really never fell off a cliff. I mean, last year was probably his worst year in the last 6 years, and he still had 1,200 receiving yards and 15 touchdowns. So
amazing.
I think the Raiders, like the Steelers, are going to be willing to deal with the sideshow as long as he produces. Now the big thing is for the Raiders, you just guaranteed him $31 million. What if he goes off the deep end again in 2019 or 2020? How do you deal with that as Mike Mayock or John Gruden? Yeah,
that's the risk they took, right? Well, Ray, listen, thank you for joining us. I know it's been busy and just great work in following all this, and we'll continue to read you. I'm sure we'll talk to you down the road.
Okay, appreciate you guys having me on. Thanks.
All right, Ray Fiittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. His take on Antonio Brown, some interesting things, and we'll get into that later. When we come back on the other side of this, we will be joined by Moe Moton from the Bleacher Report. He'll tell us why the Antonio Brown trade factors into the Derek Carr situation, and it might not be what you think. Stay tuned. You're listening to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Raider, and we've been talking to folks all morning. We've been talking to you about it. you can call in later. We're going to have a little bit of a roundtable BS session later to digest everything we're hearing from all these folks. Thanks again to Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News, Ray Fiittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and now joining us, one of our favorite guys who, like me, got no sleep last night, although he's 3 hours ahead of me, so I think he got less sleep than anybody. And that, of course, is Moe Moton from Bleacher Report. Mo, how you doing this morning, buddy?
Yeah, as you said, I got about 4 or 5 hours of sleep, but I'm here. So this is what we do in the business. So I cannot complain.
No, and I'm sure with everybody waiting over the last few days to see what happened, getting to this point clearly was something everybody was waiting for, and we kind of had a feeling based on everything that it was going to go down this weekend. So Mo, first of all, give me your initial reaction overall of the trade based on what the Raiders gave up versus what they're getting.
My initial thought was I was wild, and I'll admit I thought the Raiders were going to wind up giving up a second-round pick for Antonio Brown. As you know, rumors were swirling that the Steelers still wanted a first-round pick, and that's part of what took so long because they were looking for the best offer. Now, when I thought the Raiders only gave up a third and a fifth rounder, yeah, I know they're going to pay him $30 million in guaranteed money. But when you look at the trade itself, they still have their top 35 picks, which means they still have a long-term view of their roster. They can still build it up however they want, get some high picks for that defense, and they get an elite wide receiver for a third and a fifth round pick. Now, if you look at it, you're getting an elite talent, top 2 wide receiver in the league, and this is what you're giving up. And I would say my initial reaction was Mayock and Gruden did pretty well. You think about it, no one said that the Raiders would be able to trade Amari Cooper for a first-round pick. Look what happened. Many people said the Steelers were going to get at least a second-round pick. Look what happened. So a lot of people had to eat crow yesterday, and the Raiders did a pretty good job with their trade.
Well, and to me, Mo, that's the other thing, too, is everybody has an opinion, right? I mean, that's just the way it goes. But at the same time, everyone, I think, universally, even folks in the media, I think, were a little bit skeptical if the Raiders had to give up either that number one, but people were more comfortable in saying it might be an okay deal if they gave up that number 35 pick, which is high in the second round. When you look at this overall and what the Raiders are getting, my only contention, and Kelly and I talked about it last week, which was, look, the Raiders are not 1 year away, right? We know how many holes they have. We know what they need to do to get better, to be a playoff contention team and perhaps more. And they're not just one wide receiver away, but giving up a third and a fifth, I mean, to me, I don't see how anybody, I've only heard one national radio host say that the Steelers got the better of the deal. But to me, that to get that talent back, even with the risk, because he is a different guy, as Ray Fiittipaldo just told us, to me is well worth it.
Yeah, and I believe no matter what the Raiders do, some people are just going to criticize it because they just don't trust. Because of what's happened with that organization over the last decade or so, people are just not going to trust any Raider trade, even if it looks good on the surface. And I was with you, and I came on the show and I said, I don't think the Raiders should trade for AB if you're going to take a slow rebuild. But what I will say is this trade tells me that Gruden is not going to take the patient route to contending for a playoff spot. And if you look on Twitter, Derek Carr is out here following Le'Veon Bell, and there are tweets going out. I don't know if the Raiders get Le'Veon Bell, but the AB trade itself just tells me that this, again, is not going to be a slow rebuild. I think the Raiders are going to try to gear it in and win now. And, again, I think they got the best of both worlds because, again, they kept their draft pick. So under the impression that if it was going to be a slow rebuild where they're going to win 7 games and win 10 games, then contend for a playoff spot, then I would say this is a bad trade. But if you look at it from the prism that they're going to compete now, and Gruden's going to sell these free agents on, look, we want to win games now. This isn't about baby steps. We're looking to take giant steps. You got AB for 3 years at top dollar. You don't waste his talent.
Moe Moton's joining us again from Bleacher Report.
Hey, Mo, it's Kelly. I've been saying that if the AB trade goes down, that kind of takes him out of the whole Kyler Murray thing. I think these rumors should probably much die now, because I don't see any way John Gruden's going to throw a rookie quarterback back there with the Bryant acquisition. We've got the 4 picks in 34. I know we're not 1 year away, but when you look, they've got a chance to add 5 pieces to this team, top level talent. Do you think that now with free agency, are they going to make a little bigger splash or try to go after a couple bigger names now than they would have before the trade?
I believe so. And again, that goes back to my point. And you make a great point that this trade also kind of puts the Kyler Murray rumors to rest because, again, you have AV 3 years, top dollar. You don't bring in a rookie quarterback who has to learn the game. You keep your quarterback, and you hope that connection builds over time. But, again, yes, I believe they're going to make some splashes. I think they're going to make a run at a defensive end, obviously. If you want to look at a safety, a couple of linebackers, I think they're going to make a couple of big splashes and then leave the rest to the draft. What I would do personally, I would go after a defensive end. I know last night I said I would go after a right tackle, but the right tackle market isn't that great this year. Unless you're going after Jawan James or Darrell Williams. So you might have to do that in the draft. But those top 4 picks in the draft, save that for the defense and then address your linebacking core, address the defensive line, and get a safety.
Yeah, and that helps too with the salary cap because you can go out. You're talking about fast forwarding the whole process of winning now instead of the longer rebuild. With all these picks the next couple of years, that keeps you under the cap where you can go after a free agent now, and speed up the process, but also keep the money where you need it.
Absolutely, and again, I just feel like the Raiders did a great job in getting the best of both worlds. Again, because I think you could sell free agents on, we're trying to win now. At the same time, say, look, we're going to have all of these picks in the top 35. We're also building for the future.
Yep.
So I think Gruden and the Raiders are in a pretty good spot.
And Mo, we got about 60 seconds left before a hard out here. One interesting point you talked about last night was what this does with Derek Carr. Obviously, Derek Carr gets a wide receiver, but you also think that now Derek Carr is on the clock, so to speak. He doesn't really have any outs, right?
Yeah, really quick. I've been on this show how many times, and what was our main topic? Is Derek Carr the guy? People are questioning, is Derek Carr the guy? Is Kyler Murray going to take his spot? Will the Raiders draft the quarterback? All of this stuff. When you're not secure in your spot, and there's speculation, there's job security issues, and you bring in an elite wide receiver, you have to deliver.
You have to. Yeah. All right, Moe Moton. Mo, thanks, man. I appreciate you spending the time on such a busy day. Have a great one.
Thanks, Mo.
Appreciate you guys having me.
Thanks, Mo.
All right. We're going to step aside, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Hayden Nadolny from Australia. We'll be right with us.
Hayden.
The skills you can develop as a soldier in the Army National Guard can give you
Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbranson.
All right, welcome back to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 on a day when Antonio Brown is expected to become an Oakland/Las Vegas Raider. Thanks for joining us. Some of you have commented online that you're calling in and nobody's answering. If you're calling in and nobody's answering, keep calling. We had a really busy first hour with interviews and calls. So our engineer, David Stepanian, has been busy getting all that stuff arranged. So if you want to call in now, we'll have some time here in the next hour. So make sure you do that. Okay. We are now going where it's still the middle of the night, early morning, and that is to Australia, where our senior NFL writer, Hayden Nadolny for silverandblacktoday.com. If you haven't read him, make sure you do that. And he's got a piece up that he wrote yesterday after we heard about the trade, praising the Raiders for the trade that brings them Antonio Brown. So now we go out on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line, and we bring in one Hayden Nadolny. How you doing, Hayden? Good morning.
Yeah, very well. Good morning.
You sound like you're in bed, brother. I love it. But no, hey man, thanks for waking up in the middle of the night. I know you really wanted to talk about this and get on the show, and we wanted to have you on the show. So you, in your piece on the website, silverandblacktoday.com, you said that the acquisition really was the move the Raiders needed to do to help boost their offense going into the draft, and that it's going to do a lot, not only for the team, but for Derek Carr. Talk a little bit about why you like this trade so much.
Because it's the kind of trade that usually doesn't happen in the NFL. So Brown's an elite talent. He's arguably, in my opinion, I think he's the best wide receiver in the league. And those types of talents just do not come available. It's like when Khalil Mack was traded. That type of talent just doesn't usually get traded. So when they become available, you really have to take a long, hard look at it. And for the Raiders, in terms of the price, it's a third and a fifth round pick, which is an absolute steal in terms of the cost. And then when you consider his new contract is roughly in line in terms of the percentage of a cap as what the receiver contracts, the top receiver contracts have been over the last decade or so. It's all in line with market value, and it just makes so much sense for the Raiders.
Well, and Hayden, the thing about it is there's no question when you're able to get a talent like this, I think it's hard to pass up on that. For a lot of the week as we built up to this trade, I think some of the narrative, especially nationally, has been, oh, there's no way Gruden's going to pass up. They're going to overpay. So everyone thought the Raiders would part with a first-round pick. Then when the Buffalo thing happens, I think, Kelly, you mentioned it earlier, I think the Buffalo domino, whether it was real or not, happened, and that kind of reset the market. Were you surprised by that at all?
Certainly. I think when Buffalo was initially announced, it sort of came out of left field. They hadn't really been mentioned, but that died down very quickly. It wasn't ever really like a close deal, and it seemed like Pittsburgh were trying to force something there as opposed to it just letting it come to them. And eventually, it really was a case of last team standing, and the Raiders were that.
Well, and you in your piece too, you talk a little bit about the comparison of this move and another Raider move from the past, and that was the trade and the acquisition of Randy Moss. Why do you see similarities between the acquisition of Brown and what happened with Randy Moss?
Well, if you look at what the circumstances of Randy Moss were when he was in Oakland in 2006, he essentially quit on that team. And in 2007, there was a new head coach for the Raiders, Lane Kiffin, and Kiffin didn't want a malcontent destroying. What Kiffin wanted to put in was a new culture, and Moss, essentially, Kiffin thought that Moss was going to destroy any chance of that happening. He decided he needed to ship him off. At the time, Moss was coming off a down year. He barely had 551 yards, I think, off the top of my head, and 3 touchdowns the previous season in Art Shell's offense. So he was seen by many as on the downside of his career, and the Raiders decided to ship him off to New England for a 4th round pick, and we all know how that went the next season.
Hey, Hayden, Chaz Osborne here. You see that a lot with the wide receivers. They kind of dictate, where they want to go, what they want to do. They seem to be running it a lot. You hear Mike Mayock, he talks. His favorite word is fit, and does this fit? Does that fit? We're only going to do things that fit. Do you think this Antonio Brown, is this a good fit?
Oh, it's a perfect fit. He's the perfect fit in any offense. If you can't make it work with Antonio Brown, in terms of on-field performance, you have a problem as an offensive
on-field performance. But now let's consider the baggage that comes with it.
Oh, the baggage that comes with it, I'm sorry. Look, it's one of those where you need to have strong people in the locker room and in terms of coaching. So, look, Gruden is one of those hard-nosed coaches. He is going to get the best out of the players. I absolutely don't have any question regarding that. It's just a matter of, can Antonio Brown work with the rest of the locker room? And I think that given the situation, there's going to be a lot of turnover in that Raiders locker room going forward, and you'll find that they'll be very accepting of him as opposed to what was happening in Pittsburgh, in which they couldn't really get him out of there quick enough.
Hey, Hayden, it's Kelly. You talk about the fit in the locker room. Every time there's like a big trade like that, you almost have that honeymoon year to where everything just works right that first year. And if that's, do you see that maybe being an issue? Like I said, he's going to fit on the field. Gruden's going to be that guy. We know we're getting 1 year out of him. If this team struggles, if Carr struggles, do you think maybe this could end up being that second or third year where it's a deal where they're just regret doing?
Well, it's a 3-year deal that he's got. So you'd like, and the majority, I think the first 2 years are essentially guaranteed, and it's that third year that there's going to be a drop-off and they can cut him if necessary or ship him off for a late-round pick. But you'll find, like you said, Kelly, the first 12 months, that will be a honeymoon period. And then at the same time, this is a referendum on Derek Carr. If Derek Carr can't work with Antonio Brown, Derek Carr is going to be shipped off in 12 months' time, and then you're going to have a new quarterback in there. Antonio Brown will no doubt approve of whoever the new quarterback is. And then you probably have another 12 months of an extended honeymoon period there anyway. So you're probably going to get at least the bare minimum two years out of him. But look, that's a worst-case scenario. I think realistically he's got 5 good years left in him. And there's no reason why the Raiders can't take advantage of that.
Well, Hayden, listen, man, we want to thank you again. Our team here is small but mighty, and we appreciate you making the sacrifice, getting up in the middle of the night on a work day because you're ahead of us, so you're getting ready to get up and go do your living. So we appreciate that very much, and make sure you read Hayden's story up on silverandblacktoday.com. We'll talk to you real soon, buddy. Thanks again.
No, thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Hayden.
You too,
Thanks,
Hayden. All right, Hayden Nadolny, our senior NFL writer at silverandblacktoday.com. So, guys, I mean, it's hard to argue with what Hayden's saying there. We didn't get a chance to talk to him about, and we'll talk about it later a little bit, is how this impacts the Raiders. They still need some wide receiver help, in my view. I mean, you have Jordy Nelson, you have some of the other guys past that, Seth Roberts, Dwayne Harris.
Cook might be essential.
Yeah, but does this change the Cook situation?
I don't think I don't think it changed it if you were planning on letting him go. I don't think this is going to be that big of a difference because the draft has so many tight ends in here. And I think slot receiver is going to be a big thing for him because you can have Jordy as the number 2 on the outside. If you have a good slot on the same side of the field.
He's still got gas in the tank.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Jordy Nelson last year, a lot of people were writing him off. He got nicked up. He was injured a little bit. But if you look at his production overall, it was very, very good. So I think you have Brown, you have him, and then you slot in some people. And my guess is I would love to see Jared Cook back. I think that should probably be their top free agent focus, and we'll talk about free agency later in the show as well. Yep. But to me, you sign him, and boy, you have those weapons that you had last year. Now you're opening it up down the field with Brown. Things look a lot better. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I think I was really looking forward to the Raiders making some moves to get some free agents in the draft. Some wide receivers in the draft. You think that changes?
It's not a number 1 priority anymore.
Right. Right. It was going in.
Although I will say, and I was going to bring this up later when we talked about it, with one of those, that 24 or the 27th pick, right now, A.J. Brown fits in that slot perfectly with Brown and Jordy.
Out of Mississippi.
If you can get those two on the same side of the field, you have to double one Brown. You can't double the other. And there are a few linebackers or safeties that are going to stay with AJ.
Yes, Brown M&Ms.
And you've already got the you've got the UPS. You've got the UPS marketing already there. What can Browns do for you? I mean, it's
the Brown brothers. I love it. I mean, no, it's exciting to think about it. I mean, I think if you're the Raiders and watching the chat going on in all 3 of our video channels here, a lot of talk about wide receivers and people being excited. I can say without a doubt, I'd say 95% of Raider Nation guys really happy with this trade. It was a move, in the last couple years outside of the Gruden move. It's been hard to find a lot of great news and acquisition. I mean, Jordy Nelson was a nice one, but last year being such a struggle, I think the fans seeing this happen. And then we haven't even talked about what this means with Mike Mayock, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But go ahead.
Even if this does wind up blowing up and it doesn't work out, it's only a 3rd and a 5th. We didn't give up any of the first. We didn't give up the second. We didn't give up one of the 2 number 1s next year. I mean, we're at a 3 and a 5.
Right. Well, and so we'll talk about that when we come back. And also, we're going to ask somebody who was in a similar situation as Antonio Brown, Jerry Porter, former wide receiver for the Oakland Raiders, Super Bowl wide receiver, their last Super Bowl, will be with us to talk a little bit about that. You're listening to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Sign up today for a new William Hill mobile sports account, and
The only way to take Silver and Black today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today. and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio in Las Vegas, Nevada, the future home of the Raiders. And we're excited to go back out. Back when we did a show back on the first Monday night game of the year when the Raiders played the Rams, and in attendance out there at the hotel for an event was former Raiders great wide receiver Jerry Porter. And Jerry Porter now joins us on the Attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line. Jerry, thanks for waking up on a Sunday and being with us, buddy.
I forgot it was even Sunday because there's no football going on. But thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, no, that's true, right? And no, our lives are all a little less fulfilling when there's no football on. But, Jerry, the obviously the news of the day, Antonio Brown is going to be headed west to the Raiders. And I thought it was perfect timing to talk to you because not only having played the position at the highest level of football in the NFL as you did and as you did so well, but being in a situation, too, where you weren't happy and then you eventually got traded. For Antonio Brown, talk about, as a player, first of all, what does it take to get you in a position where you were in a place where you were successful, you had good times, you had teammates that you really loved and got along with, and things change a little bit, and then you're trying to leave. How much of a relief is this for Antonio Brown? And we're not even talking about the money yet, just about being able to go in a situation where you feel like you're wanted and you're going to be a part of the future of a franchise.
Well, first thing, that situation doesn't apply to me. I was never in the situation where I ended up getting traded.
Right.
Ended up having some subpar coaches and coaches with some alternate agendas, and things just seem to, when they say stuff hits the fan, it splatters. And, that was my situation. But for him, far be it from me to say what he's thinking, but the way his actions look like his end game was to try to get cut so he could go wherever he wanted. Because no person in their right mind is out there throwing. I'm going to say throwing because he's airing out the locker room laundry in the media and going on different shows and talking about what he wants and making slight demands and everything. And the Steelers had already come out and said they didn't see him coming back to be a part of the organization. So it was one of those things where it's best for both parties involved, and just good for him to get a chance to start fresh in a different organization, different quarterback, and hopefully he'll get the respect that he wants.
Well, and Jerry, when you talk about that, and you're right. So I didn't want to make it sound like your situations were the same because they were not even close. But for you, and as a player in a locker room where things like that, if you had a teammate like Antonio Brown and things like that are going on, how much we hear it from media folks, right, who like to gin things up because it makes a good story and it gives them the opportunity to now get clicks. Back in my day, it was more like readers and viewers and stuff like that. But for people inside that locker room, for the Steelers at the end, how much of a distraction can something like that really, really be?
Excuse me. To be honest, within the locker room, you try not to speak of another man's money, and I saw that through the Steelers. They just said to hell with that premise, and we're going to talk about other players here or not here, their money, what they should be doing or whatever. And it was really childish and petty, and away from how locker rooms are actually conducted. Because I've been in situations where a teammate of mine, again, you don't talk about other people's money, so a teammate of mine was waiting to get extended or whatever the case was. It was time for him to get new money. And when the situation called where reporters would ask us, well, what do you feel about? It's not my business. And that's pretty much the way you're supposed to be.
Right.
And for me to find out, not say find out, I mean, everybody knows the Steelers had O-linemen talking bad about Le'Veon Bell because for whatever reason, the contract situation. And that, I don't think it got to a point with Antonio Brown about money. But the thing that kept coming back to the forefront with Antonio Brown was respect. And when I was on the team with the Raiders, we had a quarterback who was 38 years old. And unquestionably, the young guys, you're going to lean and look to him for leadership. But at the same time, we had a 38-year-old quarterback. We had a 36-year-old wide receiver. We had a couple 30-plus-year-old defensive players. And at no point in time did our coach or our GM, anyone say that our coach is our team has a 38 or however you want to say an MVP quarterback and 52 kids under him. It's one of those things where like you don't speak like that. These guys from the point we leave college, we're considered men, and we like to be treated as men. And I feel what Antonio Brown was doing and saying, but it was just an odd way of going about things.
Hey, Jerry, Chaz Osborne here. You talk about the locker room, and I've been a part of a lot of locker rooms working for the NBA, and it can be a fragile thing. How do you feel Antonio Brown moving to the Raiders? Is it going to be explosive? Can it work?
I don't even know the Raider locker room right now. Coach Gruden is he's 10 years, 11 years removed from the. Actually, no. Wow, I was about to say something stupid. He's about 18 years, 17 years from the coach I knew.
Yeah.
So I can't say how he gets down. When he was younger and with us, he would stroll through the locker room and throw a couple jabs at people and get you going, and just like a older brother, just kind of like a thing where you kind of get the guys going and try to motivate guys to go out there in the field and produce, even in the spring. So I can't say who the unquestioned leader. There shouldn't be an unquestioned leader of a locker room. These guys should police themselves and act accordingly. Yeah. So to look up and down the Raider roster, you would think that Derek Carr is the leader, is one of the leaders. And with this money that is put in AB's account and what they're expecting him to do, you're going to also expect some leadership from him. Yep. And on defense, I really can't say. I haven't really watched that much. But, you're supposed to have a few leaders, and those guys can come together and kind of make decisions or make decisions and think of the best path of things, how things should go for the team. But going forward, it's going to be one of those things that you have to monitor.
Well, I think Gruden's, still the same guy. I think, obviously he's a little older and wiser, but I think his energy and his focus is contagious, right? And so I think all of the players, and now they all have a year of the verbiage, under their belt. And with Antonio Brown coming in, I think it's just going to be a seamless fit.
Well, and Jerry, what makes when you you're laughing, I love it. When you look, and because you watch a lot of football too, when you look at Antonio Brown as someone who played the position at such a high level in your career, what makes him so good, and what do Raider fans? What are they going to get a good dose of? What should they look forward to?
From what I've seen from him, he's not the biggest, he's not the fastest, but his attention to detail is pretty unique. Like you see any ball near the sidelines or near the out of bounds, like he calls himself Tony Toe Tap. He most of those plays near the sideline, he's getting 2 feet in. From what I hear, he's an extremely hard worker. So hopefully that's contagious. He'll make his quarterback work just that much harder. He'll make the receivers that are behind him, working alongside him, work just that much harder to be able to keep the pace, because he's going to command at least 4 eyes on defense. He's going to have the corner who's ever on him and the safety help. So that's going to give other opportunities for other receivers and other people in the passing game. So that should be, like you said, a seamless transition.
Yeah, we hope. Well, I know you've been trying to break into broadcasting. What kind of things have you been doing?
Well, it's been cold because nobody wants to hear what I have to say because I've been away from the game so long. But I'm still got my ear to the ground listening to see if anything is going to open up for me.
Hey, you always have a seat right here next to us, Jerry.
Yeah, and you know what, Jerry, you're refreshing, I think, for a lot of folks too, because you tell it like it is. You've done that here today with us, And I think people just want to hear that. A lot of people get things that's a bunch of spin, and Jerry Porter always keeps it real, and we really appreciate it. And we appreciate you taking the time, and I'm sure we'll get you back on the show real soon.
I appreciate it.
All right, Jerry Porter,
thanks,
of course, Super Bowl wide receiver for the Raiders, with just great insight. We appreciate him being with us today and taking time out of his Sunday. All right, well, when we come back, we're going to talk to you. Give us a call, 702-889-5978. Tell us what you think of the trade. You're listening to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Las Vegas, a city that thrives on change, will be hosting the Pac-12 men's basketball tournament at the T-Mobile Arena to capture the conference crown. March 13th through the 16th in Las Vegas. Order tickets now at pac-12.com.
Hey, this is Tim Brown, Hall of Famer. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
Speaking of wide receivers named Brown, Tim Brown brings us back in from some of those commercial messages. You are listening to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas. And now we want to get to you. A lot of folks calling in, and we thank you for your patience, because I know we had a lot of interviews this morning with the trade, and so the phone lines have been jammed up, but now we're able to get some of those calls. And we go out to the official mayor of our phone lines, and that, of course, is Wally in Henderson. Wally, you're on Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio. What's happening, my man?
Hey, man, I was when I first started about the trade, I was pretty pissed, but now that I've been listening, I'm starting to warm up to it a little bit. But I don't know. He was sticking with the Belichick model pretty good there.
Yeah.
And this is the first deviation that he's had from it. He said when he was out of the game, he really learned from Belichick. And I'd like to see him really stick to that, because Belichick wouldn't have made this trade.
Well, and we had, Wally, it's a good point. We had, and I'm not sure I agree with you that Belichick wouldn't have made the trade, and I'll tell you why in a second. But when we had Michael Lombardi on, who worked with Bill Belichick, wrote his book called Gridiron Genius, he talked about Gruden and the fact that Gruden was following a little bit of that roadmap, but that it takes discipline to do that. And I think that's where you have a good point, which is, does he have the discipline to stick to it? Because you have to pass on some big names occasionally to do that. I think with the case of Antonio Brown, the price coming back, and if you look at Belichick, what Belichick did with Randy Moss and what he did with some other players in New England, it's not unlike Belichick to do that. Now, I understand that some of the negatives here with Brown are a little fresher, and so they might seem that way. But to me, if they would have given up a first-round pick or even that number 35 pick at the top of the second round, I wouldn't have liked the trade as much. But Wally, they really didn't give up much.
No, I agree. Yeah, the 3 and the 5, like they said, we basically traded Cooper for Brown and kept our pick. So, yeah. I mean, if you look at it that way, that's a heck of a deal.
But are you more concerned with the locker room issues and the attitude, or what was your concern?
Yeah, I tweeted you last week. The guy's a cancer, but I don't know if Gruden can keep him under control. But a tiger doesn't change his stripes very often.
No, it's a good point.
And like you guys talked about earlier, you saw how the Moss thing went. It was cool for a year or so, and then it just was a train wreck after that.
No, I agree with you all. I think that is the big question mark. At the same time, to use your Belichick analogy again, Belichick has been able to get those guys in, get them to buy in for the time they need them. So when you're talking about Brown now, guys, on a 3-year contract, you got to get him to behave and buy in for 3 years. And so if Gruden is following the Belichick model, Wally, he's going to have that magic touch with the player that might be disgruntled from somewhere else to keep them in line.
Well,
right?
Sports teams they're a fragile thing. When you're winning, everything's great. And all of a sudden, you start losing a little bit. That's all. Things can go south real quick, and so that might be a part of his problem. You want to be a winner. You want to be in a good situation.
Yeah. All right.
Well, he's got a great quarterback, because Derek Carr is a great quarterback.
Yes, and that's a polarizing thing, as much as it surprises me in Raider Nation as well. But Wally, hey man, thanks for calling again. We really appreciate your support and you listening.
All right, Gully, later.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Wally.
All right, Wally from Henderson, the king of our phone lines. You can call in too. Tell us what you think of the trade. Was it a good trade? from a compensation standpoint, was it a bad trade for locker room? Let us know. 702-889-5978. Wally's a great caller. Anyway, Kelly, not Wally, Kelly. What do you think? You think Gruden's going to be able to keep him focused and in line? Because Mike Tomlin and John Gruden, different types of personalities.
Yeah. I think he can. Like I said, you get that honeymoon period, but everybody's talking about the locker room and everything. But, there's three sides to every story. There's Brown's side, there's the Steelers side, and there's the truth. So there's stuff floating around everywhere. I'm not here. Nobody's throwing anything at anybody but Brown right now. This is the same thing you do whenever you dump a girlfriend or whatever. It was never my fault. I did nothing wrong. She was the problem. Roethlisberger's never been that guy that everybody rallies behind. There have always been issues with him in the locker room and everything like that as well. Yet he's completely skating on all this stuff. You're Mike Tomlin, who's basically lost control of that team over the last couple years. You're not hearing anything about him. All of this stuff has just completely fallen on Brown. Well, now, he has, like I said, he's not completely innocent of this stuff, but if everything was as bad as it was, he would have been gone by now.
Well, and Chaz, I want to bring you in on this too, because having worked for a professional sports organization, locker rooms and all that kind of stuff, and you touched on a little bit when we talked to Jerry Porter just a few minutes ago, bringing in a guy like this, if you're the team, you're an established team, and you're bringing in a player who's got a quote-unquote reputation, what do you have to do from an organizational, a coaching staff perspective to make sure people are comfortable and that he feels welcome and that the team feels like it's not a threat?
Bottom line, you got to win. I think the Raiders are on an uptick right now, so it's a good situation. You feel like they're moving in the right direction. There's really not a lot of expectations maybe this first year, and then they're moving to Vegas, so there's going to be all that excitement. So I don't want to say it's all going to get lost in that, but he should just play right along and do his job. And I think we're all going to have a good time the next couple of years because there's not a lot of expectations, but we are on an upswing. And, he's a proven winner, and those are the kind of guys you want to bring in. And in my opinion, he can only help. I get all of his antics, and like Vinny made a great point earlier about he's more of an NBA, showman kind of guy. And that is part of the NFL's problem. They just barely let the touchdown celebrations start happening a couple of years ago. And I understand they didn't want, Randy Moss mooning the crowd and those kind of things. But, if it's done in a fun fashion.
Let them show some personality, right?
Show a little personality. Sports is fun. It's entertainment. That's why we're here. Bottom line, it is about winning. And I think he's a guy that's going to help us win.
Kelly, isn't his personality made for the Raiders' mystique?
For the old Raiders and everything that has been out there, that's why, it was like a logical pick for him to come to the Raiders. But, you just hit the nail on the head with the other thing. The first year, like I said, you get that honeymoon with the first year. But then the second year, it's the first year in Oakland. So everybody's going to be excited for that. So you've basically got the 2 years already kind of set in to where no matter what he does, he won't be the biggest story. Mm-hmm. It's, this year it's the first year with the trade. Next year it's going to be the teams in Vegas.
Right.
So that's going to just drown out most of, if not all, of everything going on.
Yep.
No, that's interesting. And what do you think, and Hayden mentioned it and Moe mentioned it, for Derek Carr now, first of all, you got to be excited, especially if they can sign Jared Cook. You got Cook, you got Brown, and then you got Nelson. 3 targets that are very sure-handed, who can catch the ball really well, and that you have the confidence in. So for him mentally, forget the physical stuff with Derek Carr right now. Mentally, this has got to be a huge boost of confidence for him going into camp.
Yep, and they had the third worst offensive line, I think, last year.
Injury, killed him.
What it came out to be, and so that can only get better. And like I said, a year, the verbiage, everybody getting on the same page, that can only help. So
yeah.
Or is it that now he's, like you said, we're going to find out now if he can? Is it too much pressure for him because now he knows this is his year?
Exactly.
That's the other thing you got to worry about is with this trade, there's no excuses anymore.
Right. No,
it's before, Cooper, he was never consistent. We never had that. You have one of, if not the best wide receivers in football on your roster. it's a make it or break it year for him now.
A better line, better everything. So we're going to find out a lot, everything we need to know about Carr this year. Hopefully, stay away from the injuries. Unfortunately, it's been a problem. We were right on the verge there until the injury happened, and after the thing with the back, he seems really tentative. So I'm not sure.
And I think that takes time. And when you break a bone in your back, it's one of those deals where, most of us wouldn't be able to get out of bed or get off the couch, and the guy's out there playing football. So you got to respect that. But it's interesting. What I like about this, too, and I'm seeing in all the chat and all our channels right now as folks are watching us all over and listening all over the world, is the fact that Raider fans are excited about this. The Raiders made a move that was a huge splash, and so now the fan base is excited about it. Now, as I've noticed with if we can have a conversation, Raider Nation, without getting offended, Raider Nation often gets very excited only to be let down very quickly. So I think you have to be realistic that although Antonio Brown is an amazing talent, he's going to improve the offense immensely. You're still in a rebuilding process, right, guys? It's not like he's going to come in and they were one player away, and now they're going to be a 12-win team.
Right. Well, the Raiders have all the pieces in place, right? You got a great head coach. You got we all think's an adequate or better quarterback. And now you're getting wide receivers, you're getting all the things in place. So I think the Raiders are really on their way in the right direction. It's all positive.
Kelly, you had said that on the podcast last week, you said that, hey, you know what? They're not one player away. So the trade, now you predicated that on what they gave up.
Yeah.
And clearly we're going to come back and we're going to talk about that a little more and this trade. We also take your call, 702-889-5978. You are listening to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gulbranson.
And down the stretch they come. Okay, it's almost Del Mar season's coming.
And
it's a few months away, but nonetheless, we're in the home stretch here of just a jam-packed, crazy fun and informative episode of Silver and Black Today. I'm Scott Gulbranson, joined by Chaz Osborne and Kelly Kreiner here in the studio of CBS Sports Radio 1140. Okay, guys, we have a little bit of time left. I want to continue Kelly's corner. Kelly has preempted his own corner.
We put Kelly in the corner.
Which, no baby in the corner, but he's putting himself in the corner because we're going to continue to talk a little bit about the trade here in the few moments that we have left, right, guys? But here's the question that I want to ask you guys and get a reaction from the all-star panel here, which is the trade for Antonio Brown. Wally, the caller, mentioned it earlier. Does Gruden have the patience to be Belichick and to follow that process of find guys for your system, not always the sexiest guy, but the right guy? Does this mean that Gruden's accelerating, quote-unquote, the rebuild, as Mo mentioned earlier in the show?
Oh, yeah. Obviously it's an acceleration because if you're rebuilding, the 3 and the 5 are worth more than a 31-year-old wide receiver, no matter how good he is, if you're looking 3 or 4 years down the line. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if you get a chance to get a player like this for what you did, you are going to accelerate that.
And I don't think we're giving Gruden and Mayock enough credit for holding out and waiting and not tilting their hand and giving too much.
Tell him your Oliver Stone conspiracy theory on the trade.
I know that some teams are going to float out certain things and they're going to try to force the issue. And here we saw the Steelers, given a hard Friday deadline, and then all of a sudden, there's all these X teams are involved, and maybe there was and maybe there wasn't. But you got to give Gruden and Mayock a lot of credit for not jumping the gun, not falling for that trick, and sticking to what they know.
And Kelly, you think though that, to Chaz's point, Mayock and Gruden, and maybe it's the impact of Mayock in the front office, they actually did show patience, and why?
Yeah, because it was kind of widely known that the Raiders were probably going to be the team that was going to pick him up. They had the 3 first-rounders. They had the second-rounder. It was just so easy for them to make that trade because if they give up a second or they give up a first, they've still got all that draft capital. And like I've got a friend works in the league, and that the whole thing at the combine was, it was almost a running joke that everybody knew, and that he was going to wind up a Raider.
Yeah.
It's just what the price tag was going to be.
Right. I felt like we would just give away that pick that we got from Dallas, and it would be a perfect,
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you say 12 months ago we traded Amari Cooper for Brown, it's like you are the greatest GM ever. Now, if you would have done that, that 20, and you know how it is in the NBA. People, draft picks have such a high value that people don't want to get rid of them, even though more often than not, you can get an established player that's going to create more value than that draft pick.
Right. All right, and we're going to go. We have another caller on the line here with Silver and Black today. It's Mike. Mike, what's happening today?
Hey, Raider Nation. How's it going, guys?
Hey, Mike.
Good. Little busy day. It's fun, man.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited, pretty pumped. I found the news late last night. I was up for couple hours checking stuff out, but I was kind of against the Antonio Brown thing at first, just because I felt like we got rid of a lot of cancers in the locker room, and then with I kind of went back and forth on the Brown thing. I listen to you guys all the time. You guys do a great job, so I really appreciate you guys. But the more I thought about it, I definitely think there's more pros than cons. I think that a guy like that and his work ethic is definitely going to help. I think it will help our cornerbacks in practice going up against an elite talent like that. And I think it's a huge splash. I've said this whole offseason that we need 1 or 2, possibly 3 really big splashes in free agency. And for this to happen right before free agency happens, this is going to be huge for us getting some really good talent in free agency. I think it's kind of a hard sell to get guys to want to go to the Raiders, and you got to essentially move 2 times in 1 year, right now, and then at the end of the season, move for the Vegas thing. But I really think that him being signed is going to help some of the other elite talent that's out there on the market be like, whoa, Raiders are moving in the right direction. We have these draft picks, and I'm really pumped.
Mike, you make a great point there. Most people, it's a cynical world, and we focus on the negatives, and everybody looks, he's a cancer, this is that. He's widely known in the league for having a great work ethic and his off-season regiment. This guy, he comes in prepared, and he's proven it over almost the last decade. He's a great player.
Yeah, no doubt. Mike, thanks for the call, man, and you know what? Thank you for your support. Without all of you and great listeners and callers like you, we're not here, so we appreciate that very much. Have a great day.
Appreciate it. Hey, can I ask you one more thing?
Sure.
The other thing I did want to say is, with someone like Antonio Brown, I'm a fiery guy at times, and sometimes you could be a roller coaster, but it can be good and bad depending on how you look at it. But if you have a player on your team that has that fire built within them, to where that's where the emotion comes from a guy like Antonio Brown.
Competitiveness,
it's a fire inside him that burns versus a guy like Cooper that's just going to quit in the 2-minute drill or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
no,
that's the other thing is there's positives with somebody that's emotional like that. They're emotional because they have a true passion and they care about what they're doing.
And
that's so
Gruden,
right.
That's Gruden and Mayock's whole philosophy. They want players.
Mike, thanks very much. I appreciate it, man. Okay, so yeah, and that's true. To me, that's the thing is he's had this one outlier situation, and we heard Ray Fiittipaldo say he's a really different guy to deal with anyway. That's beside the point. What we saw in the last year is a competitiveness, a desire to win, a desire to be wanted and recognized for your contribution and winning, to your point, Chaz. So it'll be interesting to see how it all goes. But wow, guys, that was like running a big long sprint. I appreciate everybody being here. Kelly, thanks, man.
Yeah, the biggest thing with this trade, because we've heard several people say they weren't into it, it comes down to everything else in life. It came down to price. It got to the point to where it was,
true.
You might like this house, might love this house, but if the one you like's $100,000 cheaper and you can actually afford it, you're probably going to take that one, and you're going to, you could work on that. The price got so cheap at the point that it's like, okay, you don't even have to talk yourself into it. You're like, for this price,
no-brainer.
I'm there.
Right.
And that's basically what it broke down to.
I like that.
It's a win.
All right. Chaz, Kelly, thanks so much, guys.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next week, and we'll have stuff going on during the week as well. Want to thank all of you for joining us here on the Silver and Black today. Make sure you check out the website, silverandblacktoday.com. We're going to have lots of follow-up on the website about that from everybody here, Hayden, a bunch of different folks with takes
this
on
might
that.
be a big story for a while.
Yeah, just a little bit. But we'll be doing that. Also, make sure you follow us on Twitter, Silver Black, the number 2 day, Silver Black Today. Check out our podcast, available on iTunes and Google Play. You can subscribe there, and you get this show, everything, all the things that you need. For my co-hosts, Kelly Kreiner, Chaz Osborne, and our engineer, David Stepanian, thanks for listening. Until next week, may the autumn wind always be at your back. And how many of you are going to get 84 jerseys this week? We'll see. Thanks. We'll talk to you guys next week here on Silver and Black Today.